we are not educated. People don't know that we have unalienable rights, from being human to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of thought, and bodily integrity. So actually nobody can, and actually mandatory is not compulsory in law, but there is no basis for it. But of course, if people aren't dying and there's a treatment, if there's not a problem, they're making a problem and trying to find a solution. But if there are other ways to solve that and the problem is not as big as they're saying, then you don't need to be pushing an agenda. So in everything, like a drug, you have to make an informed choice. So if it's histamine and you're not allergic to it and you think it helps you and you talk to your doctor, you take it. You know what I mean? So it's the same with a vaccine. You have to think, well, do I need it? Or is there another way? And then it's a personal choice, but it's all about informed consent. But when the government starts mandating things, right? And even though they know mandatory is not compulsory, and all of these things are regulations and guidelines, and the reason why they are is that I've never worn a mask and I've never been tested, because I just say to people, there is no legal basis for this. In fact, you're actually infringing on my rights. And if you do have an underlying condition under the guidelines, right, like asthma or an autoimmune disease, you can get a letter exemption from your doctor, and then you are exempt. But if they start saying we need your temperature tracked or whatever in a restaurant, you can say in the guideline, if they don't respect it, you can actually take them under the Disability Act, right? But that's actually at the level of acts and law, whereas I'm saying there's a much higher level that people are not aware of our natural rights, our unalienable rights. And in all of our societies, the government cannot infringe. And that's why I'm going around doing rallies, because I don't know if you saw in Trafalgar, there was no issue and there was hundreds of people in riot gear, right? So what they were doing was infringing on our freedom of speech and freedom of thought, right? It might have looked like they were infringing on our freedom of assembly. But if you can't assemble, you can't actually build your opinion and assess your thoughts, because you don't have the freedom to meet people. And so there is no basis. So what they're doing, also I entirely object that people can't worship. And the state has no power to interfere with how many people come into your home. They have no power to take your children. So, and even what I'm finding, it just sounds very arrogant now, but I don't mean it to be, is that a lot of lawyers and barristers are arguing at a certain level, but actually there's a much higher intrinsic level that because of our humanity we have freedom. So I have set up the Freedom Party, and I'm saying we need to set up freedom parties and potentially have referendums, in November, December on the performance of the government. Or potentially what the governments are doing is they're saying, well, the United Nations and the World Health Organization, we pay a lot of taxes for these non-accountable, non-elected international organizations to do things. And then the governments go, oh, well, and all the restaurants and hotels goes, well, the guidelines, it's not us. And then the governments go, well, the guidelines, it's actually the World Health Organization, right? But when you look at the World Health Organization, there's no real accountability, they're not elected. So really COVID-19 is, showing up society that the politicians want to coast by for 10 or 20 years in a row, not be held accountable, often, bring in policies that are obviously have detrimental impact on society, and then go as if, oh, well, we're doing this because we care about you, when actually they know, and then they set up these scientific committees, by people who tell them what the World Health Organization, and then anyone who has a counter opinion is labeled, to other them. Psychologically there are these buzzwords so that you all think, oh, well, this is okay. And actually subconsciously you all have kind of been primed, as we all have, that hydroxychloroquine must be bad, that anyone like me who does it, I must have an agenda, because we've been labeled. And it isn't really communicated that, like Dr. Adil has been fired, and nurses who are trying to give, correct treatment to people have been fired. And that's not just for people. Now, I haven't been fired yet, but, they're doing their best. Well, they're not actually. They haven't found anything yet that I've said that they can fire me on, but I'm sure any day now. But you know what I mean? So that's not just to us or the 10 people that stand up. The issue is they want to intimidate people who have huge debts. So medical students now, which used to be medical school was free, and nursing was free and hands-on, and they were wonderful nurses. Whereas now the doctors have to pay 10 or 20,000 to go to college, so they have a debt. And when they see someone speaking out, they go, well, that didn't do any good anyway, right? They've lost their job, they've been isolated, they now have lost their career, so I won't speak up. And not only will they're saying not speak up, they'll just say, just wear a mask. Like my doctor said, Dolores, just wear a mask, right? He wouldn't give me the thing until I said, listen, you know, you have to, obviously. You know what I mean? But I mean, of course, if you're 70, you wouldn't have, you know, and my doctor's 20 years, you don't want to have that kind of friction. The doctors, if you have asthma or whatever, they should give you those exemptions so you can be exempt, but they're not making it easy. So they have actually reduced the bond, I think. You know, the politicians, the media, and I think once someone calls it out, it's only common sense. Everyone goes, yeah, that's right. So this COVID-19, I saw a sign about 10 days ago that said, it had that Bill Gates's, you know, it was a banner at one of the rallies in Dublin, Bill Gates' photograph, and it said, your plan was to vaccinate the world, you know, with the vaccine. Inadvertently, you've actually woken up the whole world about what's going on. So I think we have to be grateful, and I think COVID-19 is a turning point, and I kind of see the future that it is going to be better, but it actually... So the thing is, right, guys, I'm afraid we're all at us. This lovely lady here saying she's been told she can't go, right? So, of course, I go, right? I fly. No one says anything to me. I'm not well known, right? I'm not well known. And it's not like they know me. So I don't really want to be known. But then in the airports, right? I just smiled at everyone. Every single person when I went to Edinburgh was all masked, right? On the plane, no one said anything to me, right? And you know why they don't say anything to you? It's because they know you have freedom of movement. You have freedom. You have bodily integrity. So they didn't even have to ask me. These are all guidelines. You are consenting to not leaving your care home. These are only... No, you weren't made. You weren't. Yeah, but you know what? If someone said, you killed someone, you'd say, no, excuse me, I'm not following orders, right? So you just have to... I'm always very polite. I just say, no, I'm not. Like temperature, I haven't got my temperature done, right? You just say, because your health information, that your temperature is private health information. Right? But obviously you have inalienable rights of bodily integrity. So someone forcing you to put on a mask is actually an invasion of your privacy. And I think that the three things I think the masks, and this is just me, I haven't heard it, is that they want to psychologically damage the next generation. They want to undermine the societal bond because people become more afraid. Yeah? They want to make, well, whether they want to make people sick or not, they are more harm. But also it allows, when you see the police and people interacting with you, they're not identifiable, right? Which is a huge issue. So what I was thinking is that the mask should actually be, of the police, should be the same as their face, you know, so that we can identify them. Yeah, and the same thing when the doctors were detaining me in the airport, two of them had masks, and I said, you know, they were obviously going to arrest me or whatever. So I said to them, what's your number, your name? Well, you know, they had masks on, like of two of the three, and they said, oh no, GDPR. Do you know, the General Data Protection Regulation? I said, unfortunately, I'm an expert in that too. Bad, not your lucky day. So I said, you know, if you're a policeman arresting me with a mask on, you can't pull the I'm not going to give you the thing, right? You know what I mean? Absolutely. I will sue you personally for false arrest, right? You know, and of course I told them we have inalienable rights and there's no requirement to sign the form. And of course they didn't detain me, right? So you can't just say, just because someone tells you to wear a mask or that you can't fly or you can't leave a care home, you guys, everyone in the world, right? The education system, the media, we've all been dumbed down, okay? So we actually do need a little court, but you guys might have more time than me, about inalienable rights, and that we are sovereign people and no one can, you can only do something by consent. The masks and the guidelines and staying in homes is only by consent. And what they want to do is they're artificially making this thing a big problem, that you have to wear masks and do things that you don't like, and then the solution is potentially multiple vaccines or multiple testing. But the thing in China, what they use the testing for is, right, why you don't get tested or you don't sign those forms is, once you sign the form to get tested, you're actually waiving all of your rights that they don't tell you. So, of course, I wouldn't sign the passenger locator form because on the the print it says you can't leave the country in 14 days. And once you do that once, you've waived, well, you don't, obviously we will get them back, but you're waiving your rights. Once you put on a mask, you're actually waiving a lot of your rights. Once you get tested, they can use your data, but your data. So, of course, if you were a big data analytics company, and you got everybody's data, especially children, you can psychologically profile them for the next 100 years, right? So you can then learn from them that whether who's going to get depression, what do they watch, right? So it's a huge invasion, the data of your bodily integrity, and your data is private, and your temperature is private, and no one can be taking your temperature, and nobody who's not a nurse, because why they're taking it is that the government in a year or two, they want the next generation to think this is normal, right? That the government can track you. And of course the beauty is if you're speaking out as a police person or a teacher or an ordinary person, suddenly your temperature is going to be high all the time, and you'll be stuck in your home and you won't be able to travel. So easy peasy. Welcome to China, right? So we have to, so part of why I'm saying we need freedom parties is that we are sovereign people. We have inalienable rights. We are lucky to be alive. It's a beautiful world. We don't need all this police. We don't need all these agencies. We need to eat well. We need to look after our health. We need to be kind to each other. We need to volunteer. We need to practice our religion, and we need to join choirs, and we need to give something back. Yeah, and it's a beautiful world, and we're lucky to be alive.